Thank you, Mark. Thanks for joining me. Mark O'Brien is CEO of Newfangled, which is based in North Carolina and an office in Providence, Rhode Island. And Newfangled really is a business model that, correct me if I'm wrong, that really works with agencies and marketers to help them understand and utilize web platforms for business development and growth for their
hmm
business.
hmm
Mark is also the author of a book called A Website That Works. And I'd like to understand from you, Mark, what do you think is missing from current sites and development that agencies are using and for their marketers these days?
hmm hmm Um, well, I think these days the primary thing that's missing is really a proper integration of systems. So uh, many agencies have come around to positioning, not all by any means, but many, certainly many more than 5 years ago. So a lot of them are putting a stake in the ground on the website, talking about a specific area of expertise they work in. So that's improved a lot over the past 5 years. And many are writing about that on their site. So that's improved a lot over the past 5 years. But very few are putting themselves in a position to get the most from that effort, both the effort of committing to a positioning and writing content about it. And so what's going on behind the scenes is becoming more and more important. And there are tools like marketing automation tools and CRM tools that really ought to be helping them along behind the scenes, but few agencies are taking advantage of that and the most effective way possible today. I bet 2 years from now, almost all of them are going to be doing it, and almost all of them are going to be doing it for their clients as well. But today, that's quite lacking.
Do you think when you mentioned it right up front there, the positioning part, when you get called from a prospect, how much do you query them on that positioning point of view to say, wait a second, before we get started, let me understand what you are and see, are you checking that out first?
Yeah, absolutely. If they're considering using us to build their site, which is about what goes on maybe half the time. So we spend a lot of our time partnering with agencies to help them with client sites, and then the rest of the time partnering with them to help them on their site. So if it's
Right.
about their site, then that's the first thing that comes up. And guys like David Baker and Tim Williams and Blair Enns, they've got really great and deep approaches to defining a positioning for an agency and testing positioning statements for agencies. And that's not my turf at all. But I can suss out a good positioning. And so my test is a really simple one. It's a two-part test to determine whether or not I think that the positioning is specific enough to float a strong website strategy. And those two tests are these. First, can you go out as the agency and right today buy a list? Can you buy a list of just dead on prospects and at least about 2 to 5,000 of those people? Can you go and do that right now? And if you're a generalist agency, the answer is no, because you can't buy a list of everybody, right?
Right.
But can you go out and buy, all the CMOs at healthcare systems in North America that generate at least, 100 million in revenue a year? Can you do that? And if you can, that's a good sign. The other test is if your ideal prospect landed on your site on any page at all, homepage or subpage, if your sweet spot target prospect land on the site and they read your positioning statement, would they be able to say, yes, that's me? Would that work? Would they instantly identify with that positioning? And if you have those two things in place, from my perspective, it's quite likely that you're going to get a lot out of the web system. If you don't have those in place, you really have to set your sites a lot lower in terms of the return you'd expect to get from your web marketing and from lots of other marketing as well.
Right. So here you are, you're talking to agencies about their clients and their own sites as well. What do you think is really missing, that the flaw that they're not getting with their current state of their sites? So everybody's got a site, and
Yeah.
you're helping them create a new direction in this business development. What do you think that fundamental flaw is in the existing ones that you're not doing?
The fundamental flaw in the typical agency
Right.
website.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fundamental flaw. I would say there does tend to be a lack of proper perspective. You know, and it's because of it's hard for them to remove themselves. Again, David Baker talks all about how agencies are inside the bottle and they can't read the label on the outside. That's an analogy he uses all the time, and it's a really good one. They're so caught up inside of their own firm that they don't take the time to step outside and think about why they have a website in the first place. And it's very easy to get caught up in the current trends. It's very easy to get caught up with what your peers are doing. And in any industry, it's the people tend to just do what everyone else is doing. And credit unions, healthcare, manufacturing, whatever it is, when they want to do a new website, first thing they do is go and look at everyone else's site. And agencies do the same thing all the time. And because Tihan Lax does something, and everyone has to do that thing, right?
Right.
And so that's really dangerous. You want to step back and think about who your prospect actually is, and start with their need and why they might arrive on your site, and how you might want them to get to the site, and what sort of journey you want them to take once they get there. And really keep your eye on that ball and that ball only. That, I think, would have a huge impact on many, many agency sites. And I see examples of that lacking. The agency site tends to be too about themselves and not enough about their prospects. And it sounds quite basic, but when you're talking about the most fundamental aspect that could be changed to greatly improve the sites, that's the thing.
Which I think goes back to the whole start of this conversation about positioning.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have a strong, concise, easily identifiable position, you end up building a site that talks to everybody, tries to talk to everybody, which means it talks to nobody.
Right.
And so you have to understand how that works, and then work it from the outside in, and how you build those things in, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So sort of similar in my vein, you see lots of agencies building their blogs, and utilizing not just senior leadership, but others in the organization to create blogs, write articles to post. Do you think those are content that should be embedded throughout a website? Should a blog be built separately so you have the ability to make opinions that aren't directly tied to that agency?
Right.
Probably yes and no to any one of those questions, but I get that question a lot. Okay, so I want to start promoting my blog. Is it something I should be promoting on my site? Should I be promoting it separately to the site but connected?
Right. Yeah, so this is a great question that comes up all the time. And I think one of the reasons why I hear this question all the time is because my opinion on the matter is counter to another consultant's opinion on the matter. So Michael Gass of Fuel Lines, who is just a wonderful and brilliant guy, really excellent consultant, and just the agency industry is lucky to have him, right? Really good guy. And he's helped a lot of agencies with their social media efforts. Both for themselves and for their clients. And I've gotten to know Michael pretty well over the years, and I'm a lot better for it. But on this one topic, we on the surface disagree, and we had a conversation about this recently. And basically, what he recommends, and Michael, you're probably going to watch this at some point, and so just when this is embedded, there's probably going to be a comment stream. Jump in and let's have a conversation about this, especially if I get this wrong when I describe how your perspective is. So anyway, my understanding of his perspective is that when he's going into an agency and they're just getting started on a content strategy, and maybe it's the principal who's going to get things going, he recommends this 30 posts in 30 days thing, just to create the habit of content creation inside of an agency. And it's a tool he uses to, in some ways, show them how much they actually know. And I'm behind all of that stuff. But he suggests when you're doing that to do that on an offsite blog. And some of the reasons he has for that, I think one, to make it so they can just set it up really quickly, because it's going to be on their site. They have to rebuild a portion of their site and make it look good. Get all that stuff. And his goal is just get them writing as quickly as possible. Hold on a second here. My computer went to sleep. Okay, sorry. Get them writing as quickly as possible. And another reason is that they might be testing the waters of a new positioning on this blog before the agency commits to it. And so that's another reason he recommends off-site. But based on the conversation we had, it does seem that we're of like minds. Once they have decided on the positioning, and once they have created the culture of writing and they have committed to it, then he agrees that having the content on site is a good idea. And that's where we come together. And the reason why I think the content ought to be on site is because this content, oftentimes it's the most time-intensive marketing effort an agency is going to put forward. Because as you mentioned, Pete, the executives are doing this content along with other people, but there are people all throughout the agency taking their time to create this content, regardless if it is blogs, newsletters, webinars, whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you have that content off-site, its ability to impact your business is limited because your site is your temple, right? That's where people can go see the work, see the people, get the vibe of the place, see the offices, and see whatever they want to about the agency. And so when it's off site, you're expecting they're going to click from that blog over to your main site. And studies show that fewer than 10% of people actually do that. So 90% of the people who are discovering you through this great content you've written will never actually see your site, and that's wasteful.
Great point.
That's wasteful. So when Michael's getting people set up and started, kind of jump starting them into this, that's great. But as soon as it's proven, move that content into the site.
So related to that, so all this discussion about LinkedIn pages, Facebook pages, how much are they? I mean, they're valuable, but how much do you replicate versus building different things for those entities versus your site?
Right. So again, my perspective is the site is the temple. So that's the source of truth for all the content surrounding the agency. And then again, just from my perspective, you use the different social media outlets to distribute that content. And so if you add a blog post to your site, you're going to broadcast it through Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and post an excerpt on those channels, the ones that allow that at least. But the link, after they read those first few sentences, goes back to your website. And so, the content resides on your site, but those other channels are basically distribution networks to build awareness around the content.
And that's something we've been trying to do within Taan is, when members are writing blogs, put up the first paragraph on the Taan site, but then have it linked back to yours. Make it connected. Connect the organization to you and back again.
Right.
So yeah, I agree with that very much so. I still personally am not sure exactly how Facebook fits into that. I understand the audience that's looking at an agency's Facebook page versus a LinkedIn page. I think LinkedIn is probably more valuable in some ways, but then again, that's it's like job posting. They're looking. I'm just not sure.
And honestly, from our very immediate perspective, Twitter trumps them both tenfold.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing what can happen on Twitter. And the reason is, somebody picks up on some link and they like it and they retweet it, and then 10 of their friends and 10 of their friends and 10 of their friends, and that can catch on fire. And it's funny what we see, for better or worse, and it's really both, is that oftentimes people will tweet something way faster than they could have possibly read it. So oftentimes people are retweeting things just to look like they read it, to look like they're smart and in the know, and they don't even read the thing. They just hit that retweet button and go. And so for better or worse, it's better because it gets you more exposure, but these people might not necessarily have any idea what they're actually promoting. We see a lot of that.
Yeah, I see that too. Is I'll see a tweet, I'll go to the article, I'll read the article, and then it was posted an hour ago, but there's already 100 retweets on this thing. It's like, okay, right. So it just took me 10 minutes to read this thing.
Yeah.
Were they sitting there waiting for this article to show up so they could set it up? I agree with you. And there's so many things you could be retweeting. You have to have some sort of editing mind in your head about what you want to retweet and what makes sense for you. And then you can spend all day just commenting on the articles that are there, which is another whole. I know there's a whole method to the madness of commenting and having those links come back too.
Right. Oh, absolutely. It's a big deal.
I think it's. So, what do you think? So here you are working with lots of companies, and you're doing some amazingly great work.
Thanks, Pete.
What are the biggest surprises you're running into with working with the agencies and their clients?
The biggest surprises. It's funny. I don't feel, and I'm not saying this to be arrogant or ignorant, but I don't feel that we get surprised very often. The nice thing about being positioned is that when you do a very specific thing for a very specific group of people for a long time, what you end up seeing are patterns and trends. And when you work with, in our case, so many agencies, there are agencies who are, very forward leaning and are always pushing things. And then there are ones who are, always catching up. And, the difference in time, in real time between those things is years, sometimes like 3 to 5 years. So we'll have agencies coming into us from certain areas, and the things they're asking for, the things they're thinking about, we started doing 4 years ago. And then we'll get the agency that just, shows up and their designers just push it really hard and, a little too hard where they want to do things that really aren't quite possible yet. But those are wonderful things. So the surprises don't happen very often. It's a good question. In terms of current trends that this one we are combating against currently, the one big issue now is parallax design. And by parallax, I'm talking about when you're on a site and you click a link and then the site floats down here, then you click another link and it floats up here, then floats down this way and that way. And like it does that and it's basically one page. Right. That's something that we're seeing a lot of agencies doing that is a disturbing trend, just because it's sort of getting back to all the things that were bad about Flash. They're recreating the wheel with whole new usability and interaction systems with each site. They're not very indexable or inherently not very indexable by search engines, maybe not the best mobile experiences. And again, it's really more about the interactive experience than the substance of the thing. And agencies continually kind of trip up on that. And that's really dangerous. And so parallax is one of those things that's a heavy, heavy, heavy spice. And there are the right ways to use it. And you can build it so it is indexable and that sort of thing. And there are ways to use it in small doses. So maybe an element of the site, maybe the portfolio is parallax, but the rest of it isn't. But that's one of those monkey see, monkey do things we see with agencies where some agencies start to do it and then it catches on like wildfire. And in order to be current, you have to do it. Well, guess what? If you're current today, you are dated tomorrow. And parallax is one of those things that in 2 years is going to make your site look really dated. Not a surprise, but a trend.
Yeah, and you mentioned the mobile thing too. I mean, what in my opinion, I understand the value of mobile for most of the marketplace. I mean, it's a great tool. It's important to have for a lot of things. How much are agencies taking advantage of that, or should they be taking advantage of it? I mean, I think there should be a place there, but does it have to be so deep? I mean, how many agencies are being investigated via a mobile device, more than just finding out who they are?
Right. And so what we see through across our contacts, typically an average agency will receive 15 to 25% of their traffic from mobile devices.
Now, is that traffic in the initial inquiry, or is it somebody's really digging deep into the site via mobile?
Yeah, we see on mobile devices typically relatively deep sessions. So in terms of referral sources, so direct or through search or through social, and also how many pages it might view and the bounce rate. The mobile sessions typically are pretty consistent with the desktop sessions in terms of the overall trends that we see going on. Although certainly with social referrals, we see a lot more social referrals driving to mobile traffic because they happen to be on the phone when they read that tweet kind of thing. And so, yeah, the site has to be wholly usable. But agencies seem to have figured that out pretty well at this point. And again, the average website lasts 3 to 5 years. And so again, different agencies are on different, spots along that continuum. But we never build a site that's not responsive these days. And figuring out how to do that isn't really that big of a deal anymore. A few years ago, it was wholly unknown and there was lots of experimentation going on. But yeah, 15 to 25%. And what we say to agencies is that if at least 10% of your traffic is coming through mobile, it's worth having a responsive site. And very few agencies have below 10% these days. Some agencies, like in manufacturing, if they're dealing with your particularly blue collar manufacturing, they might not get as much from mobile. But others who have like field based, so agencies that specialize in agriculture, right? Their clients are out in the fields and they are almost exclusively mobile. I saw a site the other day that had, it was like 89% of the traffic was from mobile devices, and they were in the ag sector.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. So that's great. I mean, that's what I wanted them to know. I mean, because I'm getting questioned of that quite a bit these days too. So
are you? Yeah.
Yeah. how much do I really need this? Can this wait? Let me get the site up. Let me wait on what we're going to put up. Uh, and
Yeah.
it's sort of, you can wait on any part of it. I'd rather you not. I'd rather you not wait for everything to be done. Get up and get going, but make sure you have a plan in place,
Yeah.
and make sure you understand what you're missing by not having those things. So before you do that.
Well, yeah. Well, let's think about the numbers there. When agencies considering doing their site, you know, agencies tend to take their time with their site. They all want to rush, but once they get into it, it's an important thing, and they want to take the time to make the right decision, which is a good thing. But you know, from the time they first start thinking about it, to the time the site goes live is usually about a year. By the time they call somebody like us, it's like 5 months, but they've been sitting on it for a while. They put it on the shelf a few times. It's about a year. And the average agency site is going to last about 3 or 4 years, right? And so you think about it, it's going to take you a year. It's only going to last 3 or 4 years. So every few years, you're probably getting back into that site cycle,
Yep.
And for agencies to get into mobile or any of these other things, there are two things about it. So one, let's use mobile as an example. Well, what percentage of your prospects are coming via mobile? Sorry, my computer goes to sleep every once in a while.
Yeah, mine's been doing it too.
What percentage of my prospects are coming to my site via mobile? That's one thing to consider. But also, your site is a proof of concept for what you know and what you're able to do. So even if only 5% of the prospects are coming to the site via mobile, maybe they're just checking out to see if you know how to do that, and if you're current with that. And so the site as a proof of concept is a big deal, which means that is another reason why agency sites have to be rebuilt a little more frequently than their client sites, just because their clients are going to the site to see if their web shops are up.
Yeah,
both visually and technically.
So my last question here, which is really, it's sort of helping, frankly, getting you to talk about your business in a different way. So you're building all this stuff, and you're helping and guiding agencies and marketers through the process to get there.
Yeah.
Another whole end of what you're doing, which is not an end, it's inherent in the business, is the analytics part and helping them. Can you explain to me how you're working with clients that, I know you're doing analytics, but the consulting side of it, how are you teaching them to review and understand how to do the analytics? How is that process working?
Yeah, well, something that's just so thrilling to me and to the agencies that hear about this and start using this, about what's going on right now in the evolution of marketing technology, is that we can now create wholly accountable systems. And by accountable, I mean we can say, how much revenue did this page generate for us to the dollar? How much revenue did this email campaign generate to the dollar? You can look at everything and break it down to actual core revenue for the agency and for their clients. And I mean, that's pretty much the end. There is no higher level of accountability after that, right? It's, I'm reading Steinbeck's of Mice and Men right now, and actually no, it was The Red Pony. I'm reading a collection of his short stories, The Red Pony, and it ends with this grandfather who was basically leading people out west, and he said along the west coast is a string of old men who yell at the ocean every day because they couldn't go any further, and that's where we are now with this. I think that once we get dollar for dollar accountability to every marketing campaign, we hit the end. And so now it's a race to just dig into that and really figure out how to tie those things as effectively as possible. And that's a huge part of what we preach to agencies and help them with. The website is 2 stages in its life cycle. There's the build that takes about 5 months, once they actually start building. And then there's the live period, which is, anywhere 2 to 4 years, right, after the build, right? So, you're going to get so much more value out of those 2 to 4 years if each month you take a look at the analytics, who's coming to the site, how they got there, what they do, and how that ultimately affects sales. And if you take the time as an agency to really look at those numbers every single month, then you're going to change the site and your approach to the site and your content strategy in lots of little ways. So by the end of that 4 years, the site might functionally be the same, but strategically it's completely different. And that's, our angle is all about that. It's the human contact, the actual conversations, the intelligent, one-on-one review of what's going on big picture with the site every single month. And, when we think of ourselves as web developers, the development part of it is just the beginning. It's the review of the results. that really makes a big difference. And agencies learn how to do that for their clients as we're, kind of teaching them how to do it for themselves.
And I thank you for that, because there's just so many agencies out there that still, they're running around going, that's not part of my business, and it's not really apples to apples, and all those sort of excuses that don't exist anymore. And you better have those things, because I think it's really become a have and have not. If you don't have those tools and the ability to demonstrate that to your marketing clients, they'll find somebody who can.
Right. Absolutely. There's the race that you're running, and there are the people you're running against. And oftentimes in the agency world, and this is probably true in any industry, those can be very different things. And Tim Williams, all of his methods for value-based pricing. If you're showing actual dollar for dollar results, that's a great justification for value-based pricing. And like you said, Pete, if they're not going to do it, somebody else will. And I think this is the edge. This is the edge that agencies can use to generate new business and then keep those clients for many, many years.
Great. I think we've talked a lot longer than I expected to. This is fabulous. And Mark, thanks for this time. And
pleasure.
I think on behalf of all my Taan members and Taan Worldwide members, I think you've given us a lot of tools. You've met my group. You're working with a number of our members, and you've really helped them. And I've heard nothing but great things. And I thank you for that insight you've given the members, but also just what you've given me for the past, what looks like about 35 minutes.
Wow, that is long.
so much for the 10-minute conversation we're going to have. This is great. So thank you, Mark, very much. I look forward to seeing you very soon.
Well, thank you, Pete. And I want to thank you for all the things you do for Taan, but also for the industry. You're one of these guys that's a prime mover behind the scenes that is making life better for a lot of agencies out there. And you're a great guy while you're doing it. And that's a huge asset to the agency world, and I very much appreciate that.
Thanks, Mark. I think I'm going to play this for my wife later, so she realizes what I do.
Sure thing. Just put it on a loop.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, see, I do things that are good. Some people think so, anyway. Thanks, Mark. Let's touch base again soon, okay?
All right, that sounds great, Pete.
All right, good.
Thank you.
Thanks.